What if the conflict you feel inside your church, inside your relationships, inside your own heart isn't coming from outside, but from within you? James begins chapter 4 with a blunt question. What causes quarrels and fights among you? He's addressing something we don't like to talk about: church infighting. Discord inside the body of Christ, and that is never God's design. These fights and quarrels aren't random. James says they're rooted in personal desires, our passions, and warring inside us. In the Greek, the word used here is where we get the term hedonism. In the New Testament, it carries a negative sense: passionate cravings for worldly pleasures that resemble unbelievers rather than the followers of Jesus. Let's take a second and read verses 1 through 3 from chapter 4 of James. What is the source of wars and fights among you? Don't they come from your passions that wage war within you? You desire and do not have. You murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and wage war. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and don't receive because you ask with wrong motives, so that you may spend it on your pleasures. Now, Pastor Rich Lancaster at Crossroads Baptist in Spartanburg, South Carolina, preached a sermon about the danger of, quote, spiritual crocodiles. And he's right, because the devil will gladly use these unchecked desires to slip into the church, hide beneath the surface, and attack when we aren't paying attention. James continues, you desire and do not have, so you murder. Now, most of us aren't dealing with literal murder, but we are familiar with the road that leads to it. What about coveting, anger, bitterness, jealousy? These aren't small sins, they are open doors. Opportunities Satan will exploit to tear apart unity, relationships, and even entire churches. Discord, slander, and heartache don't appear overnight. They emerge when a whole range of desires run unchecked in our lives, especially when we take our eyes off Jesus. Then James speaks directly to something we've all been guilty of. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, to spend it on your passions. I think this verse hits home for everyone. How many selfish prayers have we brought before God? How often do we live two separate lives? One that knows we should go to God for our needs, and another that runs to Him with selfish motives, seeking only what gives us pleasure. Rather than seeking God the Father to meet our needs, we sometimes treat Him like a means to fulfill our wants. And it's important to remember, this book, the whole letter, was written to believers. If we rip these verses out of context, it can almost sound like a checklist of things to do to earn God's approval. But James isn't giving us a list to perform. He's given us markers of what it means to know God. James writes with a pastor's heart. He stresses that wisdom from God gently reforms us as believers. God's wisdom is what teaches us to handle blessings, persevere through trials, resist temptation, and walk in humility. We can never achieve perfection or wholeness on our own. Only God gives us that. James 4 reminds us of something simple but life-changing. When our desires lead, division follows. But when we seek God Himself, not just what He can give, we begin to draw close to the one who transforms us from the inside out. So take a moment today and ask, am I seeking God or using God? Are my prayers shaped by my passions or His purposes? As we walk through this chapter, let's choose to draw close to the Father and seek Him in all that we do. Thank you again for joining me today. Stay rooted, stay still, and He is worthy.